Now let's look at how labels are created. Let's see what are different options or configuration details which are available present in the process of creating a label. Select so select on sensitivity labels, and then you have options like create a label or publish labels and export a label and refresh. So create a label is where you are going to create a label, and once it is created, publish labels is the place where it is actually published. Let's see different configuration details present in the process of creating label. So confidential ID. You have a name and also a display name. The priority can be highest, or you can provide description for users who are going to use this particular label. Confidential information is labeled appropriately. Okay, then description of for admins, whoever is going to administer this particular in future, he can have some notes. This can also be a version control where it says where date of created date, purpose, author or creator, and then you can have one more. So details about the change log. So in future, if someone changes this, then again he has to add what is the change he has done within this particular label, and then he can also add the created date or change date and the purpose of it and the person who has changed it. So that's how this particular part can be useful. Next, now you can see that files or data assets. So the label can be applied on files or data assets. So when I say files, files present in Microsoft 365 applications, or data assets present in Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Fabric, including Power BI and Microsoft Azure. The label can also be labeled on emails. So label messages sent from all various versions of Outlook. Then you have meetings. So the labels can be applied on calendar events and meetings schedules in Outlook and Teams. Then the last one is groups and sites. So the groups and sites are nothing but SharePoint sites, Loop workspaces, Teams, Microsoft 365 groups. These are groups. So right now it is disabled because there should be some settings that have to be done in order to apply labels on groups and sites. We will also go through them later. However, this is to configure privacy, access control, and other settings to protect label teams, Microsoft 365 groups, SharePoint sites, and Loop workspaces. Then you have control access, apply content marking, and then protect teams, meeting, and chat. So in this place, you are going to use the label to work for different ways. So let's say control access. So control access is an option where if you select it, we can configure access. We can configure access. The one control who can access and view labeled items. So in later section, you can configure the names, you can configure users who can access and control these particular labeled items. Then apply content marking is the next one. So apply content marking is where you can have header, footer, and watermarks to the labeled documents or emails. Then you have protect teams, meetings, and chats. So this is where the teams, meetings, and chats are protected. Next, so these are settings related to access control. First one is remove access control settings if already applied to items. Or second one is configure access control settings. So if we want to configure access control settings, then Either assign permissions now, which will allow you to assign permissions here, or let users assign permissions when they apply the label. So when users are applying, users can apply permissions on the label. So let's select assign permissions now so that we can understand more about permissions. The next one is user access to content expires. So the user who has access to a particular label or to a particular document with this particular label, we can configure whether he can lose access after a specific date or after certain number of days or never. So assign permissions, add all users groups in your organization. You can add all users and groups in the organization, add any authenticated users, or add users or groups, or add specific email addresses or domains. So add all users and groups in your organization. We'll add everyone in the organization. So right now we can consider selecting add users or groups. So I'll find out the sample users for this. I've added them. You can also add groups here. Now these all are co-authors. That means they can change the label settings on documents. Then you have used dynamic watermarking. You can customize the text here. Custom text and timestamp will appear in watermark along with the user principal name. Use provided tokens for the UPN and timestamp. UPN token is required. Then you have double key encryption. You have to create a double key encryption before and then you have to add it. We will look into it later. Now you can edit these permissions. Choose permissions. So you can make a person owner or restricted editor or viewer or custom or editor. If I say restricted editor, then he will have access to view the content, view rights, edit the content, save the edited document, then reply to the email if it is an email, reply all or forward or allow macros obj model. If I say viewer only, then he can view the content, view rights of the document, but he cannot, let's say if any email is there, he cannot reply to that email, he cannot forward that email or edit rights, and also allow macros. See, the difference between editor and restricted editor is print and copy and extract content. So if I select editor, then he can print as well as copy and extract the content. If it is a restricted editor, he cannot print or copy and extract the content. Then content marking. So you can add a watermark, header and footer. So when it comes to emails, emails will accommodate only header. They will not have a footer. Let's select all three and see what we can do inside. Add a watermark, customize text. You can add the text here. I can say confidential information. And you can increase the font size to 20. And you can have the font color as blue and text layout as horizontal. It depends, horizontal or diagonal. Because it is confidential, let's consider changing it to red. Then you can add a header. And then font size can be changed to 20. It can be black, can be either on left, center, or right. Similarly, you can add footer as well. So let's look into settings for Teams meetings and chats now. So here we have different settings in order to configure for Teams meetings and chats. So the first one is control who can bypass the lobby. So everyone can bypass the lobby, or people in my organization, trusted organizations and guests can bypass the lobby, or people in my org and guests can bypass the lobby, people in my org can bypass the lobby, people who were invited can bypass the lobby, or only organizers and co-organizers can bypass the lobby. Now let's say if I don't select this and select something else, people who were invited, then you can see that for remaining options, people dialing in can bypass the lobby is enabled. Now the next one is control who can present it. So everyone can present, do presentations, can present the desktops or files, or people in my org and guests can only present it. We can select that, or we can let meeting organizers select specific people. We can do that. Only organizers and co-organizers can select it. Now the next one is control who can record and transcribe. So organizers and presenters, organizers and co-organizers. So these are the two options available to control who can record and transcribe. Now if I deselect this, then there are options to control meetings automatically. So you can let the meeting record automatically. That is one way, or you can disable that. Or if I deselect this, we can control end-to-end decryption for meeting video and audio. That means if you select it, you won't be able to record meetings automatically or control who can record or transcribe. That means the meeting cannot be recorded. So if I select apply end-to-end encryption, or you can deselect it. So the next one is control watermarks. So if selected, you won't be able to control who can record and transcribe or record meetings automatically. So if watermarks are applied, so don't apply watermark to shared content. So if someone is sharing over the meeting, then this will apply watermark to shared content. And if I remove this, it will not apply the watermark to shared content. The next one is apply watermark to everyone's video feed. So it can apply watermarks to everyone's video feed, or we can ignore that. Then we have control meeting chat. We can also control meeting chats. We can let on, off, or in meetings only. That means the meeting chats can be turned on or turned off, or these chats should be available only during the meeting. Once the meeting ends, the chat wouldn't be available if I select in meeting only. Then prevent copying and forwarding of meeting chat, live caption and transcription. So people will be restricted from copying or forwarding the meeting chat or live captions and transcriptions by selecting this. Now click on next. Then we have option to auto enable, auto label for files and emails. So if I enable this and add a condition to label this particular confidential -IT, then we can add a condition here. So based on the condition, auto labeling will happen. So when content matches these conditions, so you have to give the condition here. So auto labeling is something that works based on a certain criteria. That means the label should be able to find out, or the Microsoft Purview should be able to find out any particular document based on sensitive information, which is created in trainable classifiers or as part of fingerprint SIT or sensitive info type. Then based on that, it will apply the label on the document when it finds it. So in this case, for demonstration purpose, I'm going to take Aadhaar SIT or also I can take Australian bank account number and add it. So when Microsoft Purview identifies Aadhaar SID in any document or Australian bank account number, then it will automatically apply the label or recommend that users apply the label. There are two options. It can either automatically apply the label or it can recommend the user to apply the label. Then if it is recommendation, then display the message to users when the label is applied. Oh yeah, I mean, whenever the label is applied, it will showcase a message here, whatever message is provided. The message could be something like the document is confidential. Yeah, so then select next. So define protection settings for groups and sites. So we did not select this groups and sites under location because it is grayed out. So that's why you don't have any options to select here. Then click on next and create label. Once you select on create label, it will create the label. Going back and checking how the locations are applied, because there is one important thing that we have to remember during this case, that is, if the label is applied wrongly, that means if the label is applied to everyone in the organization, then it will cause a lot of problems. So you have to ensure that it is carefully applied. So don't try this until unless you have Microsoft Purview user one. These users are dummy users, specially created for Microsoft Purview testing or practice. But this is very important that you cannot apply directly to everyone in the organization, or else it will affect everyone. You have to ensure that you have proper development strategy or test strategy, and only then you can apply that. So I'll click on create label, which will create the label. So now the label is created. Now we have three options here. You can automatically apply label to sensitive content. You can select that, so that it will, the next step would be to create an auto labeling policy in order to apply the sensitive label automatically on files or stored in SharePoint or OneDrive or emails. Or you can publish the label right now for all the user apps, or you can just ignore publishing it. It will only create the label. I mean, it will only have the label right now, but it won't get published. So until unless it is not published, it won't work. So as part of we will keep it as don't create a policy yet, because we will look into how the publish policy has to be created. Click on done. It's complete. Now it's confidential ID. This is the one. So let's look into feature about how to publish this particular label. Click on publish label publish. Then because we have already selected there, so it came up here. You can add different kinds of labels to publish. However, we will restrict to confidential IT only for now. Next, then click on next. So this shows to whom this particular label have to be published. To all users and groups. You can alternatively change it to specific users and groups and include only those users and groups to which you want to publish this. Yes, done. So this is very important to understand. If you are not careful about the selecting which users to whom this particular label should be available, then it is going to create a big problem. Then select next. Then users must provide a justification to remove a label or lower its classification. So these policy settings, there are 4 policy settings. One says users must provide a justification to remove a label or lower its classification. So that means on an email or on a document, if this label is already there, or if there is another label and you want to downgrade the label, that means downgrade means a label which does not have any control, okay, access control issues, or the label which is open for everyone. Such label would be a lower one, whereas the label which showcases confidential and it has access controls and everything, that is something at higher level. So also the other one is you would have seen list of all labels and you would have seen the ranking for them. So whichever is ranked lower than this particular label, that is at lower level. That means when you are trying to move from this to a lower level label, then you have to provide a justification if you select it. Then requires users to apply a label to their emails and documents. Now, if you don't have an auto labeling policy and you want this to be manually applied and you want to make this mandatory for the users, then you have to select it. Then requires users to apply a label to their Fabric and Power BI content. Again, this option, when enabled, makes it mandatory to apply a label to their Fabric and Power BI content. Then provide users with a link to custom home page, help page. So you can also provide a link to the users where the users can go to a website which talks about the importance of labels and how this policy acts, works and everything. Then you can provide a label here, sorry, URL here. So for demonstration purpose, I am going to remove them and select next. Now you have an apply a default label to documents. Now this option is to ensure what should be the default label when this particular label is published. That means if you have selected 2 or 3 labels as part of publishing create policy, publish policy, then they will be coming up. All 3 which are selected will be coming up here, and also you'll have none. So you can select which one should be the default one when a document is opened. You can also keep it as none, or you can make it as confidential IT. Next, then apply a default label to emails. So this is about emails. You can make it as same as document. So let's say you are attaching a document and document has a label already. Then email will automatically inherit that label if you select same as document. Then you can also select none where the email will where the default label will not be applied to emails. It will be only none, or you can select confidential IT to make it default label. The other option is email inherits highest priority label from attachments. So you have 2 to 3 documents which are attached to the email. Now document 1 has priority 1, and then document 2 has priority 2, and the document 3 has priority 3 label. Now the email will inherit the label priority, inherit the label from document 3 because that is of highest priority. So the whole email will become will get labeled with the one that has the document that's present for the document 3. Click on next. Then you have apply a default label to meetings and calendar events. So this is about applying default label to meetings and calendar events. It can be none or confidential IT, and also you can let it inherit inherit highest priority label from files that are shared as part of meetings and artifacts, Teams meetings. So again, you can automatically apply the label or recommend users to apply the label. Click on next, and this is about apply a default label to Fabric and Power BI content, none or confidential IT. Then next. So here we're going to provide the name of the label, policy, confidential IT publish policy. Submit. Yeah. So it will take 24 hours to publish the labels to the selected user apps. So now we have seen how the label has to be created, can be created, what are different options present in as part of the process of creating a label, and we have seen how the labels are published. Now let's look into creating an auto labeling policy. So the auto labeling policy I explained already while creating a normal label. So select on create auto labeling policy. It is to label confidential IT label to documents based on any sensitive information that is identified in those documents or emails. Next, it's validating. Next. Now, the auto labeling can be possible on email exchange, Exchange email, SharePoint sites, OneDrive accounts, Azure storage, and Azure SQL Server. So let's select Exchange email for now. Again, let's select only specific users for demonstration purpose. Again, I am mentioning again, so you should have a proper plan while selecting these users. You should be using only those users which are created for development and testing purpose. You should not leave this for all users and groups, or else it will affect drastically and it will cause a lot of problems. You must have a proper strategy before even selecting, before even getting into labels or label policies. You can select SharePoint sites. Again, this is also very important to understand. So this is also very sensitive. Basically, you must understand that you should have a proper test site to test any policy, or you should have a proper strategy for development testing the policies. Done. And then OneDrive accounts. Let's select a specific user for OneDrive accounts. Now these three are related to Microsoft applications. Now the remaining two, like Azure Storage and Azure SQL Server, these are for databases. So when these three are selected, these are the remaining two are not available, especially. Then if I deselect them, remaining two will be available. Before checking out about Azure Storage and Azure SQL Server, let's check it out what options we have based on the locations like email exchange or SharePoint or OneDrive. Next. So here two options are there, common rules and advanced rules. So common rules means all rules which are created in the next step will be applicable for all three locations. Or if I select advanced rules, then whatever then you will have individual sections to create rules for email exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint. For now, we'll get into advanced rules and see how it is going to work. So create rules for Exchange email. So here you have to create rules that should be applicable only for Exchange email. Email rule. Then you can add a condition saying that, okay, let's say content contains a specific sensitive information or content is shared to someone, or sender IP address is something you can specify, or recipient domain is something you can specify. Let's say you want to send this to outside organization, to someone outside the organization, and he is from a different organization. Then you can add the domain of that particular organization so that the label will be applied to an email which is being sent to him. Then recipient is, so the label can be made specific to only one or two recipients, or whatever number of recipients, whoever you want to add, you can add, and based on that, whatever is added here, the label will be applied. Then attachment extension is, attachment is password protected, and you have any email attachments content could not be scanned, any email attachments content didn't complete scanning, header matches pattern, subject matches pattern, recipient address contains words, recipient address matches patterns, sender address contains specific words, or sender address matches certain patterns, sender domain is something which you can give, then recipient is a member of, that is also you can provide, sender is, so based on the sender name also this can be labeled. Then attachment name contains words or phrases, or attachment property is, or attachment size equals or is greater than. So let's say I select content contains here. Now the content can contain sensitive info types which you can select. For now I'll select Aadhaar SIT and add a condition again. I can add one more condition here saying that content is shared. Now if the content is shared to a specific people, like with people inside my organization or with people outside my organization, you can select anything. Then you can add recipient domain. I can say just gmail.com for now. Then attach sender IP address, recipient is, so let's say okay, I can ignore right now, I can ignore this, and let's look into other one. Attachment extension is, now let's say the attachment has something like PDF. Okay, or you can add one more saying PPT, you can add XLS. Okay, so this is how it is added. Similarly you can select for remaining as well. Then you have exceptions. Now you can add exceptions here. Exceptions means apply this rule based on this condition, but you can exempt these particular people. Now in this whole condition, we are saying that the content should be shared to only with people inside my organization. So this rule applies to people who are inside the organization, and the information is Aadhaar SIT, and the recipient domain is Gmail. That means within the organization, if the recipient name, domain is gmail.com and PDF PPT XLS, then this rule will apply. But let's say within the organization, instead of having this rule for everyone, I can also exempt some people, except if recipient is canerica.com. This is adding this domain is slightly contradicting the whole condition, so I will remove it. This should be for some other kind of scenario, so I'll remove this. Okay, now what happens is this condition will be applicable for everyone, but it won't be applicable for this person. Similarly, I can add other exception as well, like except if recipient domain is, except if attachment extension is, except if attachment is password protected, except if any email attachments content could not be scanned, and you have many other options, except if header matches patterns, and so on. Now, once I create this rule, I save this. Now it will get created. Yes, the rule is created. You can see the summary of rule here. The content is condition is content contains any of Aadhaar SIT, and then it is being shared only with people inside my organization, and the attachment is file extension is PDF, PPT, or XLS, then apply this rule. Then select next. Now this is about SharePoint files. You can create a rule, SharePoint rule, then add a condition. Because this is SharePoint, you can see a different set of conditions here. So content contains, when I say content contains, the document which is available in that in the SharePoint site, if that document contains any sensitive information like type other SID, then apply this rule. You can also create a group, like you can also select some other groups, Canerica offer letters. Then exceptions, add exceptions. You can also add exceptions like except if file extension is .docx, okay, and save. So this rule is created. I mean, it's getting created. So let's wait. Okay. Now you can see the condition. Content contains any of the is other SID, and content contains Canerica offer letters. Then apply the this particular label on them, but exempt documents which are having .docx extension. Similarly, the next one is create rules for OneDrive files. OneDrive.rule, and then for OneDrive files also the settings would be something similar like that of SharePoint site documents. So in this case, I'll say file extension is. So this rule will be applied for those. Sorry, this label will be applied for those documents in OneDrive which have .pptx as extension. Then you can also exempt the file based on the document size or document created by or document property or attachment or document name contains words or phrases, or except if file extension is. Then save. The rule must contain one or more conditions. So add, so that it will get added and save. So this is how auto labeling rules are created. Then you have additional settings for emails here. So it can automatically replace existing labels that have the same or lower priority. If selected, this label will replace existing labels if their priority is the same or lower than this one, regardless of whether the existing label was applied automatically or manually. Then next, now you can run this policy in simulation mode. So when I say simulation mode, it will show you the documents, and on the documents you can see the tips, and basically it will show what are the documents, emails, and OneDrive documents and SharePoints that get affected because of this particular label. Now during the simulation mode, it will actually won't label anything. It will only show you what are the documents or emails. As I said, what are the emails or documents from SharePoint and OneDrive can be labeled. After 7 days, we can ensure that this runs. So it can automatically turned on after 7 days if the policy is not modified in between, but it will run in simulation mode for 7 days. The 7-day period will restart each time the policy is modified while in simulation mode. So let's say if you have modified the label, then the 7 days period will restart, and again it will get into simulation mode for next 7 days. The other one is leave policy turned off, so it will just turned off, remain turned off. So this is how the publish policy is created. Let's wait for this particular policy to create. So the auto labeling policy is created now, and click on done. So it should be available. You can see this policies under auto labeling policy. So the one that we created right now is it is yet to populate. Okay, we haven't we did not publish it, but it should be available. Yes, you can see here confidential IT auto labeling policy. Right now it isn't off, inactive. So this is all about creating sensitive labels and publish policies and auto labeling policies. Thank you.